I think it's now a good time to bring in defense attorney Eric Nelson. Eric, years ago, we wanted to bring you in. You represented a client who was acquitted eventually in a self-defense homicide along the St. Croix River in Wisconsin, Levi Aker Kendall. Now here we are, about 10 years later, Nikolai Miu on trial, looking at the potential for life behind bars if convicted on that top murder count. We talked here, Eric, this is a case of self-defense. Did you take away anything at all from the opening statement there from Carl Anderson?
I did. First and foremost, it was an interesting approach to an opening statement. It seemed to me to be sort of a second-by-second recitation of what the state is seeking to prove using the screenshots. And there were some effective uses of screenshots on the part of the prosecution. Nevertheless, I really do think that the substance of the video is going to be really extremely important. I think that that's one of the things that you can definitely take away from the prosecutor's opening statement, is just how important this video is in fact going to be. I think where the prosecutor kind of dropped the ball a little bit was it really diminished, I think, and intentionally so, diminished what the other groups were saying. They made certain references to him being a pedophile and being a child molester, but clearly those types of comments are very threatening, or can be viewed as very threatening to a middle-aged person surrounded by a group of kids in bathing suits. So, I think that there is definitely, I'm looking forward to the defense opening statement to see how they address this.
And you heard the prosecution there talk about why didn't he not walk away? Why did he not walk away? Why did he engage with these tubers? Obviously, we're waiting for an answer from the defense, but they showed screenshots, Eric, where, look, there's open river, step back. Obviously, it's not, we don't see the video in real time. We don't see the commotion sort of going around it. But right now, as this jury steps back, grabs a drink of water, what do you think they're feeling? What do you think they took away from that?
I mean, I think that that's one of the downfalls of just using screen grabs in a situation like this. So you can craft and create whatever story you want with a still picture. But in real time, and when you're hearing what is being said, that video is going to really answer a lot of those types of questions. It's very easy when you're sitting here, in an office or in a television studio or even in a courtroom to say, look at all that space he had to leave, but you don't know how quickly people are coming towards him. You don't know the things that they're saying. So seeing the live action video is going to be, again, critical.
What do you make, at least as it is alleged here, the transcripts from the aftermath, after he's arrested and he goes back and speaks to the lieutenant at the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office? It would appear he is blatantly lying about what happened on the river. Obviously, there could be subtleties in there, but this idea that the prosecution put that out for consumption right off the top, the lies he told in the aftermath, those exist. We now know behind the scenes why the defense tried to squash those statements he made to law enforcement. They said he wasn't properly Mirandized, that he had asked vaguely for an attorney, wasn't granted one, and that he spoke to them. It seemed, Eric, awfully damning for the way he described it, almost trying to, make up a scenario that would get him off from what happened that day.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the defense's primary obstacles in the case. Again, it's when you have a situation like this, it's very common for people to be in shock, people to be afraid. I mean, you heard it from the victim that you interviewed right after the incident, where people's perceptions and memories and all of that, all of those different emotional responses are triggering, whether you're a victim or the defendant in this case. It's going to definitely be something, however, that the defense is going to have to explain why he told that story.
When you heard that opening statement, I know we're just in the early stages and we have to report on it sort of piecemeal. We still haven't heard the defense. I go back to that first question we talked about in the beginning of our show with your coverage and the fact you represented a client in a high-profile self-defense case in Wisconsin. He took the stand, Levi Aker Kendall. Does now what you see there and just the beginnings of this case suggest absolutely Miu needs to get on the stand and tell this jury what he saw, what he felt that day?
Absolutely. I think that it's critical, and it's also critical for him to be able to explain why he said what he said in that moment. Uh, it's going to be very important, I think, for Miu to testify. Now, of course, he doesn't have to, but that's going to leave a lot of unanswered questions for the jury.
And the way this was introduced with the screenshots, we talked about evidentiary, sort of the rules of evidence, and when things are put into as an exhibit, and the jury would consume it. It would be played in open court. Would be through Jawan Cockfield, the young man who shot this video. Are we now awaiting his testimony where he would say, yes, I had my camera out, I was rolling, and then this evidence, this video, that sounds like it will make or break this entire case? Is that when we will see it for the first time?
Going to be one of the first witnesses.
It sounded like we have a little bit of technical issues with your Zoom feed there, but I did hear you say at the end there that Jawan Cockfield you would expect to be one of the first witnesses called to testify. Obviously, I think about Lieutenant Brandy Hart, the discussion she had with Nikolai Miu at the jail that day. What is her testimony? That would obviously then allow for the recording of Nikolai Miu's story that he told that day. That would then allow that type of evidence to come in. But you heard, there are basically three groups of tubers that are going to be critical here. The defendant is with it one group of tubers. He is basically sort of, as I would describe it, at the top of the river as the currents would take you downstream. In front of him is the group described as the Carlson group. Those are adults. I think, as you saw there, that includes Riley Madison. If you've watched my coverage, you know we spoke to Riley Madison in the immediate aftermath of the stabbing from her hospital bed. He described them as adults, certainly in the 20s. Riley was 24 at the time that she was stabbed. And then a little bit further down again, as the river flows, in the middle there were the high school boys, being stupid, being drunk. Isaac just turned 17, getting ready for senior year of high school. He's with his buddies. Jawan Cockfield is shooting the video that captures the entirety of this. Now, it will be important, as you read in the charging documents, the camera gets turned at times. All of a sudden, the commotion picks back up. Yes, the state selectively chose screenshots to describe what you're watching. No doubt, right? I know Eric Nelson, the defense attorney. Important to note, Eric, with all due respect, I know you're a great legal mind here, but you do come to this with some perspective on the defense side of things. So we will wait to see what Aaron Nelson, the lead attorney for Nikolai Miu, has to say. And I'm just wondering now, during that 10-minute break, obviously Aaron Nelson had no idea, the specifics of the state's opening. He's now heard it. What is he doing right now to prepare for his crucial opening statement to respond?
My guess is that Aaron is really just making some minor adjustments to address certain points that Mr. Anderson raised in his opening statement. It's really going to be a pretty minor adjustment, I would expect.
And I would just take a moment to point out Aaron Nelson is an extremely successful sort of Western Wisconsin's Hudson base. I covered a trial of his about a decade ago that he won an acquittal on. They've hired Corey Chirafisi, a very well-known Madison-based, again, like yourself, Eric, with some history of self-defense. He was on the Kyle Rittenhouse defense team, won an acquittal in that high-profile nationwide spotlight case down in Kenosha, Wisconsin. These are two successful, esteemed attorneys. How important is that as we go into this crucial trial, knowing his life really is on the line? It's a life sentence if convicted on this top count. How important are the legal minds that are trying this case for him?
I think extremely important on both sides. The defense is certainly experienced. They have many cases under their collective belts, as does the prosecution. My guess is that the defense has been working diligently, prepping this case. They understand what they have to do, as does the state, right? They have an anticipation, their ability to anticipate the arguments. It goes both ways.
In that case, we've talked to you about Levi Aker Kendall. You know, there are several differences. Your client at that point wasn't in the river. It was like a river bank situation, so there wasn't the threat of water. There was no video of what happened. The video here really changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
It does considerably for a whole host of reasons. Most significantly is just really from the defense perspective, is that notion of putting, the jury is supposed to put themselves and look at this from the perspective of what the defendant was feeling and experiencing in those moments. So that is a critical component in this case. Aker Kendall was a much different situation, but there's, again, a lot of information that we haven't seen. These opening statements are really designed to just sort of be
we're ready for Mr. Nelson's opening statement.
A glimpse.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. Yep. Thank you, Aaron. Yep, we're going back to another Nelson. Aaron Nelson now delivering Nikolai Mew's response. Here is your defense opening statement in the St. Croix County Courthouse in Hudson.